Time to record another video. Maybe for when I'm drinking. What's up, guys? My name is XANAA, and hi, how's it going? Today, I'm gonna be talking about Need for Speed Carbon. Now, this is gonna be a bit of an interesting video, as I've been playing this game the longest out of any that I've talked about so far making these videos. This is the one game that I actually sort of have quite a bit of experience with. And as I've gotten older, this has been more of the drop-off for many people in terms of Need for Speed. I often hear this game associated with the decline of Need for Speed, or at least the start of it. So, with that being said, what's all of that about? Let's find out. So, yeah, let's talk about it. So, Need for Speed Carbon, what would come as a surprise to nobody, is a direct sequel to Most Wanted or Mod. I mean, it did sell 16 million copies, why wouldn't you copy from the very best? But we should reflect a bit on the past games first. Hot Pursuit 2 was a product of what the franchise had always been up until that point. Speeding with very exotic vehicles while being under pursuit. There being a few outliers such as the rally games and Motor City, but that's just what they were, exceptions. Then in 2003 they decided to break the mold with Underground being a tuner's fantasy. It sparked a new generation of people that nowadays want to steal a poor grandma's Miata. And then fucking ruining it! Need for Speed up until that point wasn't really that big until the release of Underground, as it exploded into popularity the franchise had never seen. A year later Underground 2 came. It was a more cleaned up sequel to Underground 1, adding a free roam and giving the game more of everything overall. And for a sequel, it's another very successful game comparing it to the older ones. Then Moaz happened, and it sold the best out of any of the Need for Speed games till this present day. And all they really did was again tweak the controls a little bit, take everything from Underground 2 and trim the fat a little. The game went with a more grittier direction rather than being as tuner focused as it had been. Instead we get the return of racing with supercars and being hunted down under pursuit. This game really knocked it out of the park in terms of being a complete package, and the success these games brought EA was unheard of at the time, so how would they possibly one-up themselves here? Well, in July 2006, EA would announce Black Box's latest game, Need for Speed Carbon, as these games would typically be released on a yearly basis. EA had to abuse what it had to abuse, and that's its personnel. But nonetheless, Carbon would be revealed, and it looked like a direct sequel to Most Wanted, but set at nighttime. And it looked pretty promising. A demo came out, we expected it to be up to the quality of the past Need for Speed games, and then October 31st, 2006, Need for Speed Carbon was released in North America, with a few days later being released in Europe and Australia. It came out for every 6th gen and 7th gen console, including handhelds, along with the Zeebo. Gotta reach that gamer market on the Zeebo! But first things first, the 7th gen version of the game is the most superior way of playing. There's nothing wrong with the 6th gen versions, however they're more limited in terms of content. The handheld versions, I mean, come on now, do you really stick around for these? I'll talk about them someday, but today is not that day. What's interesting about the handheld games is that they got their own exclusive title, making them more of a spin-off version of the main game with how different they are. I'll be making a video about that at some point, but for now focusing on the main game. Likewise to its predecessor, a special edition was released called the Collector's Edition, adding a few extra challenges and race events, along with some extra vinyls and multiple vehicles exclusive to this version. And packaged with that, we also get a bonus DVD showing you the making of this game, as well as some behind the scenes stuff. The game also got DLC, which I never got to purchase myself because I was too late and they don't offer the option anymore. Well, the Dixie A, because I would have gladly still purchased it now even with the Xbox 360 marketplace shutting down soon. But we can mod the DLC directly into the game on PC, and I'll get to that later. And lastly, an arcade version of the game was made that I've played myself. It's really just An arcade version of the game, heavily cut on content, but it's fun, and I had a good time with it. Jesus, now we've got that out of the way. The collector's edition is going to be the version I will be playing through this review. And, let's get it started! We start the game, and what we have is the main career mode, My Cars, Challenge Series, Quick Race, Custom Match, which is online play, which was shut down, and then reward cards, statistics, and options. I mean, let's start the career mode and talk about the story. So obviously, the game picks up where we left off with Most Wanted. The player evades the entire police department in Rockport by jumping over a bridge and presumably drives off in the distance. The player in Carbon is then discovered heading towards Palm City in the BMW M3, and we begin having some sort of flashbacks to a prior race happening here. Well, that's right. I guess at some point in the player's life they started racing in Palm City first, racing for Darius against the main crew bosses of this game. The event was ambushed by the police and they arrested everyone there. However, Nikki, the event hostess, I guess, manages to hand over the prize money in a bag to the player, but unfortunately gets arrested. The player was then forced to leave Parliament, and it's revealed the bag did not contain their prize money. So what the hell? Anyway, back to where we were. The player gets distracted from remembering that night to the point where we now got Cross chasing us again. Yeah, remember him? This time he's back as a bounty hunter trying to chase you down. However, the player makes an oopsie, gets their car stuck between the construction work and against Cross, and with no escape, Cross prepares to haul the player away and collect his bounty. It is in this moment you realize how lucky you've been that this guy was gonna lock you up the first chance he got. He then missed his chance, letting the player slowly climb up to the top of the ranks to become the most wanted street racer, taking over all of Rockport, and still not catching him when everything became a last resort. Only to be stopped by Darius and his crew. Darius, who I guess just runs whatever happens in Parliament, ends up paying Cross's bounty on the player and takes this opportunity to form some kind of crew together with the player. See, the way Darius sees it is he busted you out of your situation with Cross, and then, I mean, this also happened and it was costful. So in return, unite together with Darius again, pay off your debt, and help him clear the streets of Parliament. Who will help you alongside will be Nikki, who rocks up a little later in her Ford GT. And that's totally not gonna be awkward or anything.
How dare you show your face here! Whoa, hey, fool me!
We then get a lift from Nikki, and she drops us off at a meeting point, where we get to choose our first car before we get things started.
Thanks for waiting up.
Yeah, sure, Nikki. Hey, who's the third wheel?
Doesn't matter. Darius made all these cars available to you. Pick one, whichever one you want.
Hey, if there's three, do I get one? I mean, I don't care which one, although I am partial to the one with the sweet rims.
Why don't you just make sure the tanks are filled?
That's great. I'm the monkey!
Pick one.
And then we get to our basic tutorial. You finish the tutorial, Nikki drives off alone and leaves you with Neville. The two of you cause a little bit of mayhem, as the boys do, and you regroup together at your safe house. We get a quick little introduction on how crews work and how you can hire people, and well, speak of the devil, we found a wingman when we needed one most. Anyway, we hired Neville, we got our safe house right here. What's next? Well, if we pull up a map, we get a clear indication of how we progress with the game. There is only going to be a few events to challenge when we start. However, once we increase our reputation from winning, we'll start seeing more events appear. You see, the map is divided into 4 different territories, with each territory displaying who's in control of that portion of the map, each gang leader having their own unique color. It's up to us to basically dominate as much of a town as possible, eventually converting all of Parliament City into our own territory. And it's also possible for the rival teams to try and steal turf back from you, so you'll be forced to deal with that. But for example, the area we start in, downtown Kempton, is under control by the Bushido crew led by Kenji. He's the first boss in the game and you get to challenge him once you take over every territory in the downtown. Then once you beat him, you get a further 2 areas unlocked with other events you get to challenge. When you beat a boss, we get a cutscene with a previous member who also happened to be there that night of the first race. But they all roughly give the same info on what really went down. To sum it up though, the race was completely rigged by Darius. The prize money bag was swapped with an empty bag, hence the reason for the money missing, and you were led off by some dude, with the intention that you won a rigged race keeping all the prize money to yourself. We eventually do get in touch with Darius again. He warns us not to take a step closer to his home turf, and he gets us arrested again by Cross. What Darius doesn't realize is that Nikki now is very much aware of how everything played out that night, and that she actually is the one who made the deal with Cross this time. She informs us that she also has a score to settle with Darius, and you unlock her as a crew member. Eventually, when we pass every event in Silverton, we do get a final boss race against all the previous rivals we had. So again, we have to beat them, and then we get to challenge Darius.
I spent that money that you got framed for. I bought Nikki everything that you couldn't.
And once you beat him, he makes his way out of town. And that's it, you've beaten the game. All of his world building, all of his story, for a racing game, to then have it never be mentioned again, or expanded upon, or anything. I find it so interestingly unorthodox of any game to really go to the extent that I feel like they did for this game. It's a simple 6-hour game and you can absolutely pay no mind to the story at all and still have a great time with it. But the fact that there is such a story beneath this game, if you dive a bit deeper and have also played Moz, it leads to a lot of questions, but all things considered, I think it's kinda cool how serious they took it and where they ended up taking it. And yeah, what the hell, it doesn't make any sense. But so far I've only talked about the plot of the game and barely any gameplay. So let's dive into the action. I mean, for starters, if you played Moaz first and then started playing this game, the controls feel near identical. It feels pretty good being at the wheel again and the physics feel great. The bigger and more drastic change being the crew mechanic. So, you sign one of these bad boys up and they act as, like, your teammate throughout the races. It's a great thing that there's now 8 people to race against, cause, I mean, otherwise I don't think this would have worked. But hey, your teammate, and what can they do? Well, there's a total of 3 different abilities your crew member can have. A scout will basically always take every shortcut on the map. It's for if you might have a harder time keeping up with the game or have a difficult time finding every shortcut. Then a blocker you can send after someone and they'll go out of their way to hit them. And then lastly, there's the drafter. A drafter I find to be the most useful of the 3. What you do is catch right up behind them, then slipstream them and then launch yourself past them. It can be a fantastic move to pull off when you need a boost the most. But another thing to consider is all these bonuses these crewmates can provide to you. So for example, you can hire a total of 3 crew members and then you can let them go whenever. You can hire them again anytime, but only 2 of them unlock multiple tuning features. So ideally they already take up 2 slots and then you can fiddle around with just 1 slot left. Samson is really great to have if you're struggling with cash. I mean, look at his cash bonus. But Nikki is really great to have because of the 50% nitro bonus, and that she's a drafter. And although they serve as a crewmate, they can also win the race for you and you'd still win the prize money. Now earlier, I know I gave you a whole ass explanation on what this game's story is. However, that is not to take away from the actual gameplay. Again, most of the game just has you doing race events, and when you pass, you just sort of move on to the next event and you don't really think much of it. Actually, we should restart the video. What's up guys, generic car guy YouTuber here, bada bing bada boom. Carbon is great. it has racing. What kind of racing? I'm glad you asked. I mean, to start off, there's our basic circuit racing, just doing a loop around a track. There are sprint races, your usual A to B event. Returning from Moz, we got the tall buff events. Again, it's this A to B sprint event, but you have to pass the checkpoints before the time runs out. Also returning from Moz, we got the speed trap events. This game is my first exposure to these events since, well, I played them in reverse order. But Speed Trap, how it works is, it's an A to B sprint event, but there's a bunch of cameras on the track you want to speed by, and the winner has the highest speed tally of anyone. Now you also want to make sure you're the first over the finish line, or else you start bleeding your score. But an obvious way to cheese this whole event is by using one of your drafters and then just launching yourself past one of the cameras. Then another new event we got is Race Wars. Now we're talking. It's just this long ass racetrack with 20 people on it, and it's people of all these different crews. Hell yes. Then replacing drag races, we return back to drift events. Now these drift events that have you just drifting in a car park, I think are a bit too simplified. Here we are, now we've got a bit of a challenge. So one of the big key selling points for this game were the canyon races. So in Japan, Taugei races have been a thing for a while now. They even made an anime about it, so obviously the one very dangerous and illegal thing that was cool as shit had to be implemented into the game. We get some different varieties of Taugei here too. Drift Taugei? Now we're talking, there is so much more intensity here. And then we have regular canyon races. Here it's a 4-player canyon race, but then throughout the game you'll be challenging these bosses to a canyon duel. These are the most hype part of us to the game. They're difficult as shit and there's small margin for error. The closer you get to a rival, the more points you'll earn and vice versa when it's their turn. You lose points upon having a collision and you can just outright win the whole event if you pass them and then keep the lead for the remaining time. Then there's also canyon checkpoints. And then when you're free roaming around the map, a rival crew might challenge you. It's just a really short sprint race, nothing much more. It's a nice nod back to Underground 2 though, which had a similar system. Speaking of, not much, Pursuit. I hate to break it to you, they didn't do a lot with Pursuit. As far as I'm aware, it's the entire Pursuit system from Most Wanted copied over to this game, but it's not like you'll be going out of your way to go after them. You might run into a cop during the races and then have to deal with that, but there isn't any incentive to engage in Pursuit. There's no blacklist with a list containing destroy X amount of cop cars to move on to the next region or any of that really. So well again, when under Pursuit, there will be these Pursuit breakers you can smash into to get them off of you. The flame at the bottom left is a heat indicator, meaning the higher the heat the tougher the cops will be. Now the map is divided into 4 main areas, into a bunch of sub-regions, and every area will have a different heat level, meaning that you'll face more of a challenge in Silverton rather than in the downtown, for example. And to evade them, if you juke them well enough, there will be a blind spot you can hide in to get them off of you. Obviously, you don't want to get busted by the cops. Whenever you do, you can expect to pay a fine to release your vehicle, and you get a strike. 3 strikes and you lose your car permanently. However, you might pick a get out of jail card from beating a boss, allowing you to get away free. Now the challenge series did make its way over to this game and features a buttload of challenges including pursuit modes. Most of them are pretty simple, like Pursuit Evasion, Trade Paint, or destroying a bunch of them under Pursuit. And then some other challenges related to Pursuit are found in the reward cards. Ram 50 police vehicles in a single pursuit. Nah, thanks ya bitch. Also earlier I mentioned how your heat level determines the aggression of the cops. Well, we can decrease that heat level by tuning our whip. So in customization, which is conveniently in our own garage this time, adding visuals will help us decrease that heat level whenever we tune our ride. This is a serious upgrade from Moz in terms of tuning. You will need to unlock a lot of the tuning throughout playing, such as unlocking the best upgrade package or even a ton of vinyls or paint jobs. but I can respect the journey of getting to that point of having every tuning option available. We can also, of course, go to the aftermarket and tune our car like a maniac. In visuals, we can now finally place any shape anywhere on the car instead of it being some fixed placement. Finally, for the first time in any Need for Speed game. Then new to customization is Autosculpt. It's this neat little thing you have. You unlock all of Autosculpt by having the right crewmates hired, so make sure you get these guys on board first. Autosculpt is a bit like how tuning works in the Underground games. There's a set amount of bumpers and skirts that you can all mix and match together and then scale. Admittedly, some body kits might look better altogether rather than using Autosculpt, but don't forget when you're using Autosculpt, you can mix and match with certain aftermarket car parts. Lastly, there's the performance section. It's pretty expensive to do, but it's pretty simple. You upgrade your car with the best package available to you, and if it's possible, you can completely cheese your way out of buying everything. Oops. Now, to be fair, this only works for a few vehicles, and I mean, it's completely unintentionally put into the game, so I'll spare you from how it works, but it's basically cheating. Overall though, I do consider the game to be very polished. Again, I have a few issues with clipping into walls when driving on the freeway, but overall the game is very clean, and you might have a laugh with the visuals. Man, the visuals and graphics I think are amazing. The models of the cars look amazing, including the AI cars. I think the world is really cool and pretty to look at. It's 2006, but it still looks really good today. In most circumstances, that is. In this game they first started experimenting with facial motion capture. It's when you get the actors to read out their voice lines while you can also track the movements of their face. And then they take a scan of you reading out whatever dialogue and they convert it into the game. You get to see the character models in game try to speak to you or taunt you whenever you make a mistake. It's kinda cool they were doing this in 2006 for their game, but it could have used a little bit more oven time. But otherwise, on the animation and cutscene department, I think they did great. The green screen is done pretty well, much better I'd say compared to Moz, and just cutscenes in general. There is a lot of them for a racing game, but personally, I like what's here. And I do also like the cast of characters present here. I think Cross has a nice new look, although I wish we got to see some more gameplay surrounding him. Darius, I think it's painfully obvious he was meant to be the antagonist of the game, no matter how he tries to hide it. There's just too many question marks surrounding him at all times, but I do really like how much of a douchebag he comes across as, being the villain and all. I really think Neville is a funny random ass character they just sort of threw in there, cause why not? What a legend.
I'm the monkey!
Unfortunately, most of your crew members don't really get any screen time. It's just when you unlock them, you get a quick introduction of what they're like, and yeah, that's just sort of it. You get the impression Yumi is like this bad bitch Japanese woman, that Samson is just one of the boys. Colin, I think, he's just alright. Sal gets introduced to you as your biggest fan and just comes across as very weird.
Hi. Nikki said that you might be looking for a new wingman. You don't know me, but well, I know you. I'm a big fan. I've seen all your races.
And on that note, I'll be out of here.
Which leads you on to thinking something more might be happening, but no. And then Nikki's definitely my favorite. I love her. I think she plays her character really well. She just sort of stands out immediately. Obviously she plays a bigger role in the story, and apparently she was your girlfriend at some point.
I have a girlfriend?
It's never really mentioned throughout the story other than what Darius says when you challenge him.
About Nikki, everything that you couldn't.
But I do feel like we're being taken care of by Nikki whenever we happen to be in the same room. Then next up, we have the challenge series making its way over from Moz. Now, in that game, it's just extra content for the player to get a kick out of, and your only real reward is unlocking a few extra cars only accessible in free play. But in Carbon, the challenge series is completely revamped and you get free challenges of every race type present in the game. Of course, I already mentioned how there are some actual police challenges here, but what I didn't mention is that you can actually unlock some cool stuff from doing these. Different paint jobs, different unlockable vehicles that you can use in the career mode, and on top of that, you get to drive some cars here excluded from the career mode completely. You can drive as a fucking dump truck. Some of these are unlockable and you can use them in the free play. But some of them are just stuck here completely and you can never really have access to them outside of challenge mode. And some of these vehicles can be unlocked but instead in the reward card section. So if we go to reward cards, this is basically another to-do list with stuff you can unlock. So perfect example, if you thought the Eclipse in the challenge series wasn't unlockable, well it is, you can unlock it right here but it's only available in free play. If you were hoping to unlock the GT3 or MR2, well, you're out of luck, because you could only ever unlock them from playing online, and the official online servers have been shut down for a while now.
Oops.
Never in my life can I actively defend the decision to do shit like this in video games. I think this is just lame as hell. I get the argument you had to be there to experience it, but I still think it's unnecessary to restrict the player to in-game content. This is base game content locked into the game.
Speaking of in-game content though, I want to briefly go over some DLC that this game got.
And yeah, all of it has been taken down, so to the lucky few who did purchase it when it was available, I am very sad and jealous. I would have happily paid for it still right now if it was still available, but no, they've taken it down. Some of the stuff here I think is seriously cool, like the Zonda or the AE86, are you kidding me? It seemed like you'd be able to purchase these DLC packs though, and then be able to play with all these vehicles throughout the career. But hey, what can you do?
Cheat.
And so that's what we're gonna do. I'll again be talking a bit about modding, but I want to keep things brief this time. Once again, many hundreds of custom cars have been uploaded online by the community. If there's something you've always wanted to drive in this game, then you most likely can. Just download it and replace every file that needs replacing and voila. Again, the creator responsible for publishing the Moaz Redux mod, Kryzee, along with many other modders, put together a fantastic Redux mod for Carbon, featuring a buttload of custom cars, additional customization, and a lot of general gameplay optimization. And what I love to see most, all the original vehicles from the base game being playable in the game, including the ones from the DLC packs. For the sake of this video, I'll be mentioning that my version of the mod might be outdated and that any newer version of the mod might include extra features not present in my own gameplay, but again, a lot of this stuff is really cool. And then one mod I really can't help but mention throughout this segment, the Ferrari F2004 mod. Just ridiculously cool. I mean, I installed it wrong and it's still cool. Once more, please check these mods out in the description below and be sure to check out other mods that they have created. They've gone above and beyond to make this project happen, and all of this is very awesome.
What the fuck? It says, what are your thoughts and feelings about the game?
First of all, I just want to say I really like the ambiance of the game. I love that it's midnight themed, and just the overall atmosphere it provides, it's absolutely fantastic. And another major feature this game got right is the customization. Now the customization, it isn't quite there in terms of like Underground 2 levels of car customization, which was extreme, but still a step up from Moaz. And just this I really like. It's still not perfect, I wish it was like how it is in Forza, but it's still an overall improvement from Moaz. And I think the tuning is still amazing, especially if you fit into this group of people. And if tuning is all you've only ever cared about, then especially with the Redux mod you can spend some time working on these builds. The music I think is really cool. Throughout the game you won't be hearing it as much as like the Moaz soundtrack. That was sorta really in your face. It feels like it sorta takes a major step back because a lot of the soundtrack you're not really gonna hear other than the main menu theme, tuning themes, or cop theme. A lot of his music is really good though, and you're given quite a bit of variety. There's grime, rock, or electro, I guess.
It's cold outside!
And obviously, it's down to personal preference which of these games you prefer. But the thing it does have over Underground 2, in my opinion, is better replayability. I mean, each person is gonna have a different taste in cars, so that can only lead up to different playthroughs from person to person. You have markers which can make things interesting and further personalize someone's game from another. This is my favorite feature from Moz as to how drastically different someone's playthrough of the game can be because of it. I love the overall pacing of the game. The only time it can be tedious is when other teams are trying to claim your territory, especially if they challenge a race wars territory and you have to go through all that shit again. But overall, in terms of replayability, you have the base game, the challenge series, and the reward cards. Plenty of stuff to do. The Pursuit is a downgrade from Moz, as they're just sort of there. I wish the career mode forced you into getting into Pursuit more, but most of the time it only just sort of happens when you're in a race. And Pursuit in career is all optional unless you go after a reward card challenge. The canyon races are cool as shit. The overall gameplay in general I think is really fun. You feel right at home if you played Moaz and enjoyed it. The AI opponents rubber band less in my opinion, and not in an obnoxious way. They stick right up to your ass during the later stages of the game, but unless I absolutely dominate the event, usually I can still win by a decent margin, and sometimes I feel like I genuinely lost. And yeah, it's not a perfect game. These games and their frame rates, yeah, it's all over the place. I do think that someone playing Moaz would have a better experience playing that game than this, and if only this game had some more oven time, could have been a slightly better project, but it still remains as one of my all-time favorite games. It might be one of the shorter Need for Speed games to burn through, but personally, as a busy adult, I really do not mind that. Having most races be 2 to 3 laps is nice. And the crew mechanic, well, with a total of 7 AI opponents now instead of 3, I really don't mind it. It's different. I can always go to free play and set up a race without a crew member if I'd had to. And I could always do a Race Wars event instead if I so desire. Race Wars, how I miss you.
And, yeah. Thoughts, feelings, opinions. Well, Need for Speed Carbon, I think, is objectively still an absolutely cracking game. It is awesome. I think it's very enjoyable. And it's a very fun game. I get the argument that I do want to mention. Is this the decline in form of Need for Speed games? Well, personally, I get the argument. I get that Moaz is sort of this fucking unbelievable masterpiece, whereas Carbon is sort of maybe a step down compared to that. It ticks all the right boxes for me personally, other than that I miss the cops. But other than that, I absolutely adore Carbon. I think it's it's this really fun game. I enjoy it a lot. And then, yeah, we got Pro Street after Carbon. It's not a game I'm that familiar with, unfortunately, but I'll be making a video about it. However, I'm under the impression that most people are sort of mixed on Pro Street. I think that's a fair shout. And then after that, we got Undercover. And Undercover was sort of a mixed bag of everything. So, yeah. That being said, though, that's gonna be it. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, share the video with a friend if you thought I was cool, and peace out!